boy.
Not
I know.
fair.
This was very rude
Look.
of me to wear these shoes.
Look.
Yes, very rude.
Not
I did it
fair.
on purpose.
Not fair.
Well, you guys came to the right event.
Thank you.
Well, before we veer wildly off the topic of Will and Grace, I do want to talk about how you got the part, because it's a pretty good story.
I got a call to read for this part for Will and Grace. What I didn't know was that the character of Beverly Leslie was originally written for Joan Collins. She was going to steal Rosario the maid away from Karen Walker. They were going to confront each other over a billiard table and do like a dynasty cat fight. You know, they wanted this, and pull each other's wigs off. Well, it came time, you know, to shoot the show, and Miss Collins apparently did not want her wig jerked off. And so they decided to recast it, and I went in to audition.
Well, she didn't show up to the table read, and one of our executive producers, one of the creators of the show, who's very temperamental, just went ballistic and decided to recast.
But the real crazy part of the story is the day that I was to go audition, I had my agents called and said, I don't know what this character is, but put on that white suit that Billy Bob Thornton gave you. A whole other story. Can't even go there. We'd never find our way back. But put on that white suit that Billy Bob Thornton gave you and go in and do that Truman Capote shit that you do. And let's see if we can't get you a part. Well, I was running out the door and the phone rang, and it was my mother, and she just launches. And I said, hello, and she said, Leslie, Wanda Slane has been shot. And I said, who? She said, Wanda Slane from church, honey, she's been shot. I said, Mama, I'm late for an audition. I don't know who Wanda Slane is. She said, of course you know Wanda. Had that little baby out of wedlock, and it looked like a pig. And remember, she would bring it to church and hold it out for you to look at, and you didn't know what to say. I said, Mother, I've got to get, who shot her? She said, well, you know, we've been having tire slashings at the church. I didn't want to tell you about it because I thought it would worry you. And I thought, Mama, I'm so glad you didn't tell me about those tire slashings at Central Baptist Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'd worried myself sick. But she said, anyway, the story just went on and on and on. And Wanda, there were some boys out there, and you know, Wanda liked to have that cigarette between Sunday school and the morning service. And the story just went on and on and on. Well, I finally got to the audition, and the only one in the room was Joni Marchenko. You remember Joni?
One of the writer-producers.
One of the writer-producers was just sitting there. And I walked in, and I said, I'm so sorry I'm late. This woman in my church got shot. And I started telling her the story. And she goes, you're it. You're it.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I did one, and then another one, and another one, and then I only did 12 over the years.
No.
I did 12.
Are you kidding?
I only did 12.
Gosh, sure made a big impression. I can't believe that. Well, you know, I do remember in that first episode, we were playing pool, of course, and you, at one point, we got into a girls' cat fight, and you jumped on my back. And I had to spin you. We got into a huge fight. I had to spin you around and then throw you down on the pool table. Well, those were the days, right?
Yeah.
Wait, tell the part B of the Joan Collins story, though.
Which was part B?
But
Oh.
her husband.
Oh. So that Joan Collins story became a staple in my stand-up act. And I never thought I'd meet her, or anything. And I got a call one day, and my agent said, "Oh, you're in trouble." And I said, "What? I'm in my 60s. How do you get into trouble? Who am I in trouble with?" They said, No. We got a letter, and it's going to be followed by cease and desist from Joan Collins' husband. Percy was his name. And he had written that this story that I told disparaged her good name, and it diminished her chances for employment. She's 83. But I didn't tell it anymore. Tonight is actually the first time I've told it, so listen, it better not leave this room.
Mom's
You
the
hear me?
word. We'll find you. Well, okay, so I want to cut to your Instagram, because that is what the book sprang out of, right? The book is so great, by the way. I don't know how many of you have actually read it yet, but it is so funny and so good. I just loved it. I could read it 10 times in a row, and I might. Got nothing else to do. But, okay, wait. So this sprang out of your Instagram account, which I played a small part in.
Yes.
I mentioned in the book.
You
I'm also
played-
mentioned as being a loudmouth, so thank you for that. So you had posted something. I followed you on Instagram, and you said that at the time you had about 20,000 followers, which is not nothing, right?
Yeah, I remember thinking, wow, 20,000 people want to know what I have to say. I was a neophyte. I didn't know a lot about Instagram. I was at a party with Tess Sanchez, who was head of the casting department at Fox, and I told a funny story, and she said, "Put that on your
She said post it.
post it." She said post it, and I thought like little post-it notes. And so she stepped back and said, "Are you not on Instagram?" I said, I'm not quite sure what it is. And she goes, "Oh my gosh." And they signed me up, and within a week I had about 20,000 followers just from, the little bit of notoriety I had.
So I saw this post of Leslie's that I thought was so funny, where he talks about the fact that he grew up in the South and he's always had a potty mouth, and that he had said, the S word. Okay, shit. I mean, come on. And who's it gonna, it's not hurting anyone. And that people were commenting on it, and he thought it was so funny, and that he remembered as a little kid hearing this limerick.
I was a little kid and a performer, even when I was little, and a boy in my school and a grade ahead of me taught me this limerick, and I didn't know what it meant, but I'll quote it for you. There once was a lady named Alice who tried to use dynamite as a phallus. They found her vagina in North Carolina, and her ass was somewhere near Dallas. But I didn't know what a vagina was. I still don't.
So I thought that was really funny, and so I reposted it, and then you say in the book that you woke up the next morning and you had 80,000 followers.
80,000 followers just from that. And then I guess I don't know anything about how that works. Word spread, my phone rang, a friend of mine said, because I was in Tennessee and he was out in California, and he said, "Honey, you've gone viral." And I said, "No, I don't have COVID. I'm with my mama." That was the only virus I knew. And so he said, "No." And we just started watching, and they would jump 1 million a day. to currently like 5.8 million or so followers.
That's a lot. A lot. Well, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, and that's what the book sprang out of. And so, in my estimation, you can do like 100 books because you've got at least 1,000 stories because I know you. So, I want to get into I just want like a few of the, you're from Chattanooga, Tennessee, right? Just a few of your sayings. You have some good turns of phrase that I really like. So in the book alone, when you talk about laughing, you say, I hollered. I'm getting an accent just sitting here. Have you noticed? I didn't have one 10 minutes ago.
She's from Oklahoma City. She's got an accent.
True. It is true. When somebody is not looking very good, you say, she was tore up from the floor up. And this is my personal favorite. When you're talking about La Crescenta, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, you say, La Crescenta is about 7 miles from where Christ lost his shoes.
Well, you've heard that. You know what that means. Well, honey, 7 miles from where Christ lost his shoes. That means way.
I've never heard that even from
didn't.
you. I must say, though, I feel like you've left a lot of the good stuff out of this book because...
Well, you know...
You're no angel.
I know.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there was a lot also, you know, I covered some of it, my unfortunate incarceration.
Yes, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I'm sober 25 years, completely sober. But I went to jail 5 times in 1 year, the last year of my drinking. I was just on a tear. I had the best time. But anyway, they arrested me and they had me in a holding cell. And I looked over and my roommate was Robert Downey Jr. So I thought, now that's something, you know. And many years later, after, you know, he had cleaned up, I had cleaned up. We were both on a TV show called Ally McBeal, and I don't know if you remember, but everybody in the world was on that. There was Callista Flockhart and Ellen's wife, Portia de Rossi, Lucy Liu. Oh, there was just a whole list of girls, and I was just enthralled meeting everybody, and they were introducing me in the dressing room, and I turned around, and there stood Robert Downey Jr., and he said, do I know you? And I said, zip it. He said, what? I said, zip it. He followed me out and he goes, did we use drugs? I said, no. 152, Pa Day, cell 13, you were top, I was bottom. He said, what? And so, but here's the crazy story, and this is a wonderful story. When I got out of the jail, I worried. There was a kid on our pod who was HIV positive, and the other prisoners treated him unmercifully. I would sit down with him to eat, and the other guys would say, don't eat with him, he's got AIDS. Don't eat with him. And even the kid would get a little teary-eyed, and he'd look at me and say, you don't have to do this, like eat with him. And I'd say, oh, no, I do. Trust me, I do have to eat with you. And so, but wait, I got a moment coming. And so when I got out, I worried myself sick about who would watch after him. And I thought, I bet Robert would. I don't know him, but he seems nice and kind. And I was the only person that I knew in the whole United States that was privy to his current address. And so I wrote this letter asking him to please watch after that kid. And I wrote, R. Downey Jr., 152, Pod A, cell 13, top bunk, and I threw it in the mail and didn't think anything more about it. Well, when I bumped into him 4 years later, he took me outside. He said, I want to talk to you. He goes, you wrote me that letter. And I said, yeah. And he got kind of teary-eyed. He said, I carried that letter with me my entire incarceration. And I want to really thank you. So I'm responsible for most of his success. I would... What?
Oh, that's great. Well, growing up in Chattanooga, you said that well, I want to talk about your parents too, and how sort of you talk so poignantly about your dad who died when you were 11, and how he wasn't he ex-military?
My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. Not exactly the son he envisioned, but he loved me. And Mother said that when I worried, you know, I always felt, because I wasn't good at sports, and I had always felt that maybe I'd been a disappointment to him. And when he died, his plane went down in '66, and I told my mother, I didn't tell her till I was almost an adult. I said, do you think Daddy was in any way ashamed that, and she just, you would have thought that I had slapped her. She said, your father adored you. Leslie, she told me this story, which I thought was so sweet. She said that they took me to a wedding when I was about 4, and they couldn't get me to sit still. Mother said it was just a nightmare. I was up, I was down, I couldn't sit still, and she thought she was going to have to carry me out. And then the bride swept down the aisle, and Mother said I just froze like a pointer dog. What have we here? And she said I could not get my eyes off that bride. And she said that when we got home, I made up a game called Bright and Goon, and I put an angel food cake pan on my head and her terry cloth bathrobe, and I put it on backwards. It was off the shoulder, empire waisted. It was beautiful, and that was my wedding dress. And I walked all around the house, and she said, you know, she just worried so much about Daddy and what Daddy would think. So, you know, we'd put away the bride dress whenever Daddy came home. But I asked for Christmas that year. I asked Santa Claus. I was sitting on his lap, and I asked for a bride doll. And my dad said to my mom, "I'm not going to get him a bride doll. I'm just not, Peggy." And so Christmas Eve, it was all. Mama said, she said to Daddy, "Well, don't mention it again, and maybe he'll forget about it." And it was all I could talk about. And I'm going to get a bride doll, and Mama, we're going to brush his hair, and we're going to play dress. I had it all lined up. So she just said to my dad, you know, you tell him in the morning, because I won't know what to say. 1958, my lieutenant colonel of a daddy scoured Chattanooga, Tennessee, and found his 3-year-old son. Mother said it was the most beautiful doll you've ever seen. And when I came down the steps and I saw it, I just squatted on the floor and peed. But you know, you wonder, my mom just passed May the 17th, and she's the reason I'm here, because that's the greatest gift my mother gave me, was my love of reading and my love of books. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any air conditioning. We would walk to the bookmobile that parked at the elementary school every Saturday, and she would let me stay there. I'd lay on my belly and read books in that air-conditioned heaven, until they ran me off. Little boy, it's time for you to go. But what a gift, you know, and what all you people are doing, and passing the word and getting people to read. You'll never be bored. That's what I always say. You will never be bored if you love reading.
Yeah, my mom is really good about that too. Well, it's such a great book, and what I love about it is that I know we were talking about backstage that you're thinking about starting another one, but it's very tempting to procrastinate. But don't you just feel like, I think of all the people I know, you have more stories than anyone I know.
Well, I've got a title. I'm going to call my next book Pretty Soon, which I tell myself pretty soon. It's going to happen pretty soon.
Well, we'll be waiting with bated breath. One of my favorite stories in the book, well, first of all, you talk about Carrie Fisher.
Yes.
And she was a wonderful person and just kind of one of those people who just sort of knew everyone. But will you tell the Debbie, the story about her mom?
The title of this chapter was called The Time Debbie Reynolds Called My Mother. I was at one of my myriad rooms of recovery, and my mother and I had one of our rare fights. I had been asked to host this AIDS event that was honoring Bob Mackie, the costume designer. And Bob Mackie, did everything. He did all of Cher's costumes. He did Dreamgirls on Broadway. He did everything. Well, we did a fashion show where the models would wear all his designs. Well, as a joke, at the very end, they said to me, would you put on a Bob Mackie outfit and walk? So I'm in this like little, it was for Cher, who must be this big. And it was a tiny little French maid costume. My hairy ass was hanging out the back. I mean, it was just awful. But it got a big applause, and la, 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 and it ended up in the National Enquirer. And they made it look like I wasn't at a fashion show. They made it look like I was on my way to buy a carton of milk. And my mother called me, and my sisters called first, and they said, Leslie, she is so upset. And she said to me, Leslie, you live in West Hollywood where people can dress like that. I said, Mother, we don't dress like that. She said, but I'm here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I have to go to Sunday school on Sunday. I can't even face the girls. You and that get-up. That's what she kept calling it. You and that little get-up. Well, it upset me, and I went to one of my myriad rooms of recovery, and right next to me was Carrie Fisher. And she said, you seem a little down. I said, well, I had a fight with my mother, and I told her the whole story. Well, we're getting up to leave the meeting, and Carrie had her cell phone with her. She said, somebody wants to talk to you. And I said, who? And I said, hello. And in that little Debbie Reynolds voice, that Tammy's in love. She said, Leslie, my mother did the same thing to me. She said, when I got a divorce, when that woman stole my husband, Elizabeth Taylor, stole. She said, when that woman stole my husband, she said, my mother called me and said, I hope you're not considering divorce, Debbie, because I live in Texas here. We do not get divorced. A divorcee is a slut, And so.
Were you dying?
Yeah.
She was telling you all of this?
So she said, give me your mother's telephone number. Debbie Reynolds did. I waited. I couldn't even sleep. Finally, the phone rang, and my mother said, what is going on? I said, did Debbie Reynolds call you? She said, she's on my answering machine, but I thought it was a joke. And I said, no, Mama, it's not a joke. She wants to talk about what? I said, Mama, just call her. So she said, well, what time? What time should I call her? So I called Carrie, and I said, well, what time should my mother call your mother? She said, before 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock's kickoff. You never know what you're going to get after that. So anyway, my phone rang a couple of hours later, and Mother said, Leslie, she's delightful. She really is America's sweetheart. And what she told my mother, which I loved, she said, Peggy, you cannot allow what parts he plays in Hollywood to be a reflection on the way that you raised him. Because, you're called upon to play certain parts, but it has nothing to do. And my mother, it was a wonderful, wonderful kind of thing that after that I started calling my mother about every part I got, and anyway.
You know what I just thought of that makes me really mad afresh is that after Will and Grace the first time around, I had this idea for a Broadway musical called Karen the Musical, and it was just going to be us. And the whole idea was that you're Beverly Leslie, and I'm Karen Walker, and Karen decides, like, she's experienced some very minor slight, and she decides what better way to get her story out than to do theater, of course, the thing that no one ever sees. And so she's going to do this musical called Karen the Musical, and so you get wind of it and you're just livid because you're you're consumed with jealousy, right? And so I'm just remembering this as I'm talking, and so then I think, well, I need to find a director. So I go in to meet with a director, and it's this director named Leslie Beverly, and of course it's you in like a wig, but I'm so dumb I don't know that it's you. And so I hire you, and then you direct the show trying to sabotage me at every turn, right? Culminating in you're trying to kill me during the show, and I fly off the stage, or I don't even remember, but it was going to be so good. And you know what happened was it was set up. Do you remember this? That Casey Nicholaw, who directed Book of Mormon, and this was before Book of Mormon, had said he was going to direct it, and he was going to direct and choreograph it. We had a great composer. We had all great producing entity, and at the last minute, the creators of Will and Grace called and said no, after giving their permission, so we can hate them from afar.
No, I remember that.
That would have been so fun.
Their excuse was because they called me too. I asked them, why would, and they said, well, we're in the middle of syndication, and God forbid it failed. It could ruin the syndication rights or something.
That's ridiculous. No, they were
that
just
we could
mad.
fail. I mean,
well, right. It wasn't going to happen. I think they were mad because they said that they didn't have time to write it, or I don't know what the hell. Anyway, it's not going to happen. It's not happening. Jill, okay, so now, would you talk a little bit about being in recovery? Because I know you said it was 25 years ago, but I know that you also have said that it really was the moment when your life absolutely changed.
Yeah. I was sitting in jail for the 5th time, and I had a 1 o'clock call on a television show with called it was about bicycle cops out in Venice. Anyway, what was the name of it? But I thought, I'm sitting there and I thought to myself, this is not what I got off the bus, because I got off the bus in 1982 from Tennessee with dreams and hopes, and everything had happened the way it was supposed to be, and it can't end up in a jail cell, sitting here. And so I had like an epiphany, I haven't had a drink since, I'm the kind of person, people say that addiction is about more, I just want a little more. Please, 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 just a little bit more. But it's been, and also what was interesting was I also realized when I gave all that up, that I was riddled with internal homophobia. You grow up gay in the South, and you're teased and this and that, and then you get past that, and all of a sudden you think you've got it all together. But so my 25 years into recovery was in many ways also a journey into my queerdom, where I can sit right here at 67 years old and say, I'm perfectly happy with who I am, what I am, And, you know, if you have a problem with that, that's your problem. It's not mine. So, yeah.
That is something that you talk about, and I think it's really powerful in the book about just accepting yourself, you know, accepting yourself and embracing yourself with all your flaws and doing it without shame
Yeah.
or fear.
Yeah. Shame. I sometimes feel like also, you know, the church that I grew up in, I thought, how can I learn to hate myself in the pew of a church? You know, that shouldn't be the way it is. And but what's interesting is that my journey into all this is also, I have no access to grind now. I've been baptized 14 times. Every time the preacher would say, "Would the lost sinner come forward?" I'd think, "Oh, I was behind the barn with that boy here." And we don't sprinkle, we dunk. And I thought, you know, it shouldn't be like that. And the wonderful part is that through all, I have this wonderful spiritual advisor who told me, I said, you know, my mom still wants me to go to church. And he goes, "Go. You're a good son, you know, go for her." And he said, listen to the message and garner what you can and leave the rest under the pew in front of you. Don't discount it, you know, because that which you're discounting could be the kernel of truth for somebody else. So don't say, "Oh, that's bullshit," you know. Put it under the pew. "Well, I left a lot of stuff under that pew," you know. I had to borrow pews. Can I borrow your pew? I got to leave some more stuff. But, you know, and I don't have any access to grind today, which, God, you know, even when I began writing the book, which is what a wonderful way, put pen to paper, write. That's the way you can release any kind of demons. Write about it. And don't edit yourself, you know. There's people who'll do that for you, trust me. Oh, those editors.
Yeah. And you said that there's no, you know, I mean, I've found this also, that there's no timeline, you know. Like we were talking before, and it's on your Instagram that you just bought your first condo, you know. And you've published your first was your first book a bestseller?
No, it didn't do really well. Because I called him back. I remember I called him back and I said, after my trip down the pink carpet, it did okay. But I called him back and said, you know, I've got some ideas for a sequel. And they go, "Well, sequel's pretty difficult when the book underperformed." And I said, "I sold 7,500 copies. They go, "Yeah, well, Tori Spelling does that in a week." Yeah, well, good for Tori.
But, you know, and at this, I don't know, I mean, you know, your whole Instagram has taken off, and you were saying that I mean, in spite of the fact that, how many credits do you have on IMDb, acting credits?
Oh, I don't know, 386.
That's a lot. That is a lot. In spite of that, you were saying that there are so many people who follow you on Instagram who think they've discovered you. They don't even know you're an actor.
I know. That was what was interesting. But I kind of like that. I mean, you know, I thought people know me from the parts that I've played. Well, that's not really me. I've played, you know, different parts. But with Instagram, I just love everything about Instagram. You know, my mother, before she passed, all of her girlfriends were on Instagram, because what a wonderful way. They didn't have to leave the house. You know, they could pictures of their grandbabies back and forth and talking with each other all day long and messaging and everything without even leaving the house. I just think it's wonderful, Instagram.
And you, okay, so I will confess I've never seen one episode of this because I don't like to be scared, but you've done a couple of seasons of American Horror Story.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's as you know, sitcom acting is basically a rhythm. It's you set up the joke, you lay it out, and any actor worth their salt doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to set the joke up. But you have to learn to do that if you're going to be working sitcoms. And I can do it, you know, bada bada bo, bada bada boo. But when Ryan Murphy started writing for me on these American Horror Stories, I mean, I got to act, you know, and they loved to murder me. I've been murdered. I can't tell you how many times I've been murdered. I've been murdered more than Kathy Bates. But you know,
tell the Lady Gaga story.
We had this scene. They had hired Lady Gaga, and she was going to play this wood sprite, this wood nymph that jumps from behind the tree, and I'm walking through the forest. See, guys, I'm the funny guy that comes in with the zinger, so I don't read scripts, you know, bullshit, bullshit, my line. Bullshit, 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 my line. So, on American Horror Story, they would always set me down and explain to me what was going on, because they knew I hadn't read the script. And so Lady Gaga was a wood nymph, and I was supposed to be walking through the woods with a prayer card, and I'm scared of her, and she jumps from behind a tree and blows fairy dust in my eyes, and I fall down, and then she's supposed to straddle me and, poke me with a stick. I'm supposed to crawl on my knees while she pokes me with a stick, and then kicks me in the belly. And I had a fake thing, I had a pad there so she could really kick me. And then I've rolled over and she squats on me and cuts my throat. It was a very simple scene. And so, right before we're ready to shoot, she said, listen, can I talk to you a minute? I said, yeah. And she took me out in the woods, and I thought, where is this headed? She said, you know, I have a problem. I tend to sexualize a lot of my parts, and I don't like that. And I'm thinking, and then she made a decision, but I wasn't privy to it. You know, literally, she went like, okay, and left, and I thought, well, hey. Well, the director said action. She jumped and kicked me and rolled me over and straddled me. And rather than cut my throat, she started riding me like a cowgirl. It was, she was like she was at the rodeo, right? And I'm just laying there thinking, how do I get myself in these situations? What could I have done differently? But, you know, I'll say this real fast because I love Stephanie, we call her. And, you know, I judge people. I can tell within 10 minutes of meeting you how you were raised. Just the please, thank you, yes, ma'am. Stephanie is beautifully brought up. She's crazy, but she's beautifully brought up, and I really do like her.
She can really sing, too. I wish I had seen that. Did you ever get to see her show in Las Vegas where she sang the show tunes or the standards? Wish I would have seen that. That's not part of this interview. You guys that can be stricken from the record. That was just some personal talk. All right, you were also in a great movie called The Help.
The Help. What a story. I have a very dear friend named Tate Taylor who, he had a friend, he's from Jackson, Mississippi. He directed The Help and wrote the screenplay. But his best friend growing up was Catherine Stockett. And when they were 14 years old, they borrowed his mother's car and drove to New Orleans. And they just had more stories. And so she had this manuscript that she had written, this novel. And she, over 68 different publishing houses had turned it down with the same reason. They said, we find it, you're a privileged white girl from the Deep South and you're writing in the black vernacular, and we just don't think that's something, anyway, it's, what does that even mean? What if the character was Irish, you know, and you wrote it? But anyway, so they wouldn't have anything to do with it. So Tate said to her, well, you know what? I just did a little indie movie with Allison Janney, and I bet I could get her and a couple of people, we'll make a little indie movie out of it. And she said, okay. And he goes, you direct. Well, then all of a sudden, Oprah came knocking. Oprah read it and wanted to play the Viola Davis part. And they're sitting in an office, and Catherine Stockett said, you know, Oprah, I love you, but I just don't want this to become an Oprah movie. It's an ensemble piece about a lot of women. And everybody in Hollywood is going, are you nuts? You don't sit in a room with Oprah. And then Steven Spielberg's people got a hold of it, and they said, you know, he's got some time after War Horse. He would love to direct it. She said, we're real appreciative. My friend's going to direct it. But both of them stayed on as producers. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I said to Tate, well, what part am I going to play? And he said, well, you're going to be the newspaper editor. And I said, oh, yeah, but wasn't he kind of like, do you want me to kind of be rough like the editors in the Superman, you know? He goes, no. He goes, Leslie, every southern town has one. I said, one what? He said, that guy that's married with 5 children, but you know. I just saw him playing the town sissy. But yeah, and you know what? He insisted that because it was an ensemble picture, normally when you're doing a movie, you're only flown in for the day of your scene. He insisted that the entire cast be there the entire shoot. So it was amazing, you know, to be out there with all of those, you know, everybody from Emma Stone. And my first scene was with Emma Stone, and I didn't know who she was. I hadn't seen anything. She hadn't done Easy A or any of those when she got there, and I didn't know who she was. And Tate kept saying, she's the next Julia Roberts, Leslie, you wait. Well, this little old girl comes in, she just kind of, she's mumbling. I can't hear her. So I went over to Tate and I said, listen, she got to jack it up here. He said, you just watch what you're doing, okay? And then you see the movie, and what a brilliant actress. A million things going on in that little face that me sitting right here, I didn't even see. So that was a real fun thing, The Help.
What is the show that you are doing right now?
I'm doing a sitcom called Call Me Kat, and we're on Fox. We did 13 for our first season, and then we did 18 last season, and then Fox finally stepped up to the plate, fired everybody, it was horrendous, and gave us the best writers in the country, the best director in the country. Everybody came from Big Bang Theory, came over. And so now we are, listen, I want somebody to write an article about, if you ever saw Call Me Kat, revisit it, because it's just brilliant. We go on the air September 29th, so please watch. Hey, do you want to do questions from the audience?
Yes, please.
Does anybody have questions back there? Oh, come up to the mic. Step up to the mic. Oh my gosh.
And when I was 8 years old, you was on the 3rd episode of Sugar and Spice.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I said to my mother, I said, that's Kyle. I said, who? But I was also mad that night because I wanted to watch just the 10 of us, and her and my sisters wanted to watch Sugar and Spice and all. And also, Megan, how did you get the Karen voice? Because I usually do it when I'm by myself.
You know, I know people would ask me, like, does that hurt your throat? And I'd be like, no, I wouldn't have done it if it hurt. I don't know. It was just a dumb thing. It started out, I was kind of thinking about my mom, whose voice was a little higher than mine. Mine's already pretty high, but yeah, so it's just kind of up there like that.
Yeah, because the pilot episode, you didn't use it.
No, the pilot episode, my character was terrible.
And
When I auditioned for that part, and initially I didn't think the character was very good because it wasn't. And then as it went on, it got better. And I don't know, I kind of brought a few things in and they would write to that. And then, yeah, it's kind of evolved. Like by maybe the 10th episode, there's the high voice.
so, how did it feel working with Woody Harrelson? Because I met him when I was 24 years old at 6 o'clock in the morning down Georgetown.
A lot of marijuana. Not on my part. I don't smoke pot. Yeah, he's all weed all the time. And very nice guy. Very nice guy. He had his own trailer. Did you know that? Did you ever do an episode with him? Yeah, his own trailer, just like clouds of pot smoke every time he opened the door, wafting out.
So, how did it feel working with James Burrows?
Oh, he's a nice guy. Yeah, yeah. He directed all 294 episodes.
That is beautiful. Cause like my mother is a big Will and Grace fan. And she's a big fan of yours and all.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And all that.
Thank
And-
Anybody
you.
else? Here, let's go over here.
And I'm looking forward to Call Me Cat.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Hi. Apparently, your entire life is about Will and Grace now. So let me pile on. I loved what happened to Leslie in the finale. Got blown out the window. I mean, do you,
Blown out the
either of you
balcony.
guys know where that came from? I mean, who
I'll tell you,
did that? That's brilliant.
they were really working on how do you wrap up years of that, and I just got lost in it. I mean, and finally I asked, I said, what's going to happen to me? They said, you're just going to blow out the window. So I just blew out the window.
It was fabulous. It was just the silly kind of thing that you guys all just did so great, and
Thank
I loved
Thank
it.
you.
So thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you write in the book about collaborating with Dolly Parton, and
Right.
I was just wondering if there are any other singers that you would like to work with on any other upcoming gospel hymns or maybe a pop star record. I don't know.
I made my wish list for, I wanted to do a gospel album, and I listed my list, and I got, not one person said no. Actually, one did, but it was because of scheduling. Casey Musgraves, it was because of, Casey, right? Yeah, Casey Musgraves, because of scheduling, but we've since going to be able to work together soon, too. So I can't think of anybody. Maybe Winona Judd, that voice. That would be a voice. The thing is that I can only sing hymns. That's all I can do. I can't sing anything else, just hymns. But yeah, to get to work with Dolly, she was that was my dream. Dream. And people say, what's she like? You know exactly what she's like. You know exactly what she's like.
Yes, and thank you for coming. Early in your career, you did a lot of television commercials, and I'm wondering how that influenced you and affected you, and if it was helpful later on.
Yeah, I did. I was almost like Flo, you know, I was the Pip printing guy for years. I was the elevator operator to Hamburger Hell, where you go if you don't eat Taco Bell. It was never ending. And then I had a casting director say to me, they had cast me in a smaller part, and she said, wow, you can act. She says, I mean, I know you could do those commercials. And I want to say, well, you dumb bitch. Listen, in a TV commercial, you got to say it in 30 seconds. You know, you got to be able to do it. Of course, commercial actors are the best. They're going. I mean, you know. So anyway, yeah. But I did for years. That's all I did for years, was commercials.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Leslie. First, I just want to thank you because during COVID, I'm a teacher, so we were, of course, closed after in March, on March 13th, 2020, and I had some really rough days. And I was scrolling through Instagram and came across your post. And the first time you said, well, shit, I about lost it because it was exactly what it lifted me up. And just hearing you talk and share your stories and just helping us all recognize that we're all in this together, that we all have opportunities to reach out and talk to other people. My three best friends since childhood, we all started coming together through social media and just, talking to each other, and your videos was helped to facilitate that. So it meant a lot to me that you shared that, and you've shared stories about your own education. So I've always admired you for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Megan, you and Nick are mine and my sister's favorite couple. We love watching you all. Everything you all do brings us joy. So thank you for all that you've contributed, and thank you just for being you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Leslie. So I just have a quick comment, and then my friend has a question. Leslie, fellow Deep Southerner from Jackson, Mississippi.
I would never have known.
Y'all would have never known. But so my mom was so excited that I was getting to see you, and she wanted to tell me that y'all are slap-ass crazy. And then also, I live in D.C. now, but I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. Drive straight through Chattanooga on the way home. And then also wanted to let you know that you are American Horror Story queen. And then here's my friend with the question.
Hi, I'm Jake.
Hi.
I just wanted to know if you could do a little sample from what a Karen the musical would, if it had come up. What would you do?
You have to play the character of Leslie Beverly.
Well, well, well. Karen Walker. I thought I smelled gin and regret.
Beverly Leslie, you're looking more and more like a woman every time I see you.
Thank you so much. Two of the funniest people.
Oh, precious. Okay.
I just wanted to get some stories possibly from one of my favorite movies that you've been in, which was Sordid Lives. And that, to me, was just the perfect cast you could ever have in a movie. And I was just wondering if you were really acting as Brother Boy, or if you were possibly just being yourself, possibly.
Well, we have 5 minutes, I think. Here's a quick Sordid Lives story. There was a scene where I play a man in the mental hospital who thinks he's Tammy Wynette. And so I have a therapist who's trying to de-homosexualize me. And I walk down the hall, and Bumper, the security guard, yells awful things at me. And off the cuff, he ad-libbed this line that was just filthy. He said, "Can you see my pussy now?" And I'm in London, England, walking down the street, minding my own business, and a cab pulled up beside me. I thought, I don't need a cab. This is creepy. It kept following me. And the window rolled down, and this old guy goes, "Can you see my pussy now?" And now for the little girl.
He's a carrot lover.
My question is, are you going to have some chicken salad when you get home?
Am I going to have to what?
Chicken salad.
Chicken salad. Yes, I'm going to have chicken salad.
I saw on your YouTube channel that you like your chicken salad and your special iced tea.
Yeah.
And I love your TikToks.
Oh, thank you. I wish we had time, I'd make you some. Okay, we got
have one more.
One more.
Thank you so much, Miss Mullally and Mr. Jordan, for sharing your awesome talents with the world. My question is, what is the best prank that you've both pulled on one another?
On one another. I don't think we pulled a prank.
We never did. You know, we
No.
barely ever even discussed the scenes. We just.
I love her because there's actresses who really want to study and everything, and I'd go, "You want to run lines?" No. Just do it.
Barely
Because
even
it's
know
like,
the
you know,
name.
when you have someone with these kind of comedic instincts, it's like verbal ping pong, you know. I could always know that when I got out there, if I hit it that way, bam, here it came back, you know,
Yeah.
the same way.
It was just one of those lucky things where we just happened to have such great chemistry together and such a great, you know, feel for each other's
Right.
timing and all of that. So.
I will tell you real fast the meanest trick that was ever played on me. George Clooney is known for playing practical jokes, and I did a series with him called Bodies of Evidence way before he was famous, years and years ago. And he went to the wardrobe department. I was on a diet, which I'm always on a diet, but I kept telling everybody, look, I'm on this diet, and I talked about it so much. I read about it in a magazine. He got tired of listening to it. So he went to the wardrobe people, and he said, take his pants out a half an inch. So I show up for work, and I go, y'all, look. I said, I'm not losing pounds. It's inches. It's just... He told him the next day, pull them out about another inch. By the third day, they were just hanging off my butt. And I was telling him, it's just a miracle, y'all. It's just a miracle. Thank you all so much.
everybody.
Gosh. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.